bill to the House.
Right. I'm once again going to issue a comment on the reading of speeches. That member is now quite an experienced member and should be beyond the period where the inexperienced member exemption applied. The member did have some figures in his speech and it would have been appropriate to refer to them, but he gives himself away when he regularly looks at his speech, just about every line, and then shuffles his pages as he's finished one and moves to another. So I am watching now quite carefully all members and applying the Speaker's rulings as agreed at the Standing Orders Committee at the end of the last Parliament. Jenny Salesa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to debate the Education Bill. Mr. Speaker, I will also try not to read my speech as much as possible. Labor wants to be supportive of a bill like this. It's been 27 to 30 years, and this is a huge undertaking that the government has taken to rewriting the educational bill. However, there are so many things in this bill that we just don't agree with, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker. The first is the community of online learning. When this proposal was first debated in the House, what I know from the coverage, both from media and just listening to a lot of the interviews after it was actually first proposed by the Honourable Minister, is that even though this bill has been consulted on for over 18 months, the community of online learning, however, was not one of those proposals that was taken out to the sector to ask them for their opinion about whether or not it's a good idea. Mr. Speaker, right now, we already allow, via charter schools, privatisation of education. Via charter schools, we already allow them, the government already allows them, to hire teachers who are not registered. But the community of online learning, Mr. Speaker, it goes even further than that. So not only are we saying when this bill, if this bill passes, that schools don't even have to have a registered teacher, what the community of online learning will allow, because the change in the law will allow it, is you don't even need a teacher. That, Mr. Speaker, is something I'm fundamentally opposed to. As a person who went through all of my schooling, having been led by a teacher from preschool, primary school, intermediate and right through to university, I had a teacher of some kind, and just knowing and seeing a lot of the schools in my area in South Auckland, seeing how the students interact with their teachers, having teachers, Mr. Speaker, is a crucial thing. And if I can quote the Vice-Chancellor of Massey University, who once observed, Honourable Steve Mahari, technology is merely a delivery mechanism. On its own, it changes nothing, end of quote. I agree. Technology is a good thing to have, and yes, we are going through revolution of technology, automation. Technology is the way of life. However, Mr. Speaker, one of the other reasons why community of online learning just won't work for all of our students is we know that not all of our kids actually has access to a digital device. There are some schools, few schools, infrastructure, that's right. There are some schools via Manakalani where parents can, by paying $3, $4 or $5 a week, they can actually access a digital device. However, not all of our schools has access to Manakalani. And so my question is, does this Education Amendment Bill allow for ensuring there is access, equal access for all of our children? The answer to that is no. Not when there is something like a community of online learning that allows a whole school to be registered. And again, Mr. Speaker, I question. We are told by the Minister that there will be a rigorous process that a private entity will have to go through, schooling would have to go through, or even tertiary education providers would have to go through before they can become a community of online learning school. But my question is, will it be more rigorous, or will it be just as rigorous as when this current government chose Serco? We know how that panned out when we allowed a private provider like Serco to run our prison systems. So the other assumption, Mr. Speaker, that a community of online learning has us questioning is, because it is definitely privatisation of education, is it is the market model. Is it a market model that says to us, you know, in terms of education, the competitive market is what will deliver better educational results? Has it delivered better educational results? If we're just to look at the NCEA results internally here in New Zealand, the Honourable Minister will probably say, yes, it has delivered. But what do those NCEA results actually mean? When we have so many of our students graduating from high school with NCEA Level 2 and some of them with NCEA Level 3, but they still do not have a job, there are still over 87,000 who are not in education, training or employment, Mr. Speaker. Do those NCEA results actually mean that our students are more successful now? When we are not filling our own jobs here, when we are going overseas, hiring people from overseas to fill in the huge skills gap that we have in this country, are we actually successful in our educational system? Not for all of our students, Mr. Speaker. And I say, Mr. Speaker, this educational bill does not actually make sure that all of our students are going to be equally successful. This current government has taken the attitude that the only learning that seems to matter is the one that can easily be measured. However, they also say that the only measurements that matter are the national standards and NCEA. And Mr. Speaker, I don't agree that that's the most crucial of learnings for our students. The other thing that this bill proposes is that our students can start school as early as 4 years old. Labor is open to the debate of whether or not we allow students, our kids, to start school as early as 4 years old, Mr. Speaker. However, we would like to see the evidence and the research to back that up. The other question I'd like to pose this government, though, is what about those poor, vulnerable students, the young students who are not currently enrolled anywhere, the ones who are living in cars, garages or tents? We know from Te Puea Marae that about 50% of the families that they served with young kids, about 50% of them were not actually enrolled in any formal education, whether it be preschool, primary school or high schools. Why? Those parents told us that they were moving so often they didn't quite see why they would actually enrol their children, because they would just have to move them. So my question to this government is, will this bill deliver for our most vulnerable and poor children? I'm not so sure, Mr. Speaker. In terms of state integrated schools, we welcome the move to consolidate education legislation by moving the law so that it allows for integrated schools as well. Mr. Speaker, there are some really good, well-integrated schools in my electorate over in Manukau East. Many of them are Catholic integrated schools. They deliver really good results for our students, Mr. Speaker, and so we welcome the move to include state integrated schools. The provision under this bill that we agree with is the fact that career services is going to be disestablished and moved in to tertiary education. We know, Mr. Speaker, just from the consultation that we've had with Future of Work Commission, a lot of people have told us that the career services advice at the moment needs to be really looked at, needs to be addressed, and we of course have our own proposal that our leader has announced. We believe of course that it is the best way forward to professionalise careers advice. It is not something that I've seen in this particular bill, and so that is something that Labor will do. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Todd Miller.